Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a meeting of Gloucester City Council's Cabinet on the 9th of June 2025. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We've got one member of the Cabinet, that's Luke Shervey, who's not here. I think everybody else is in attendance and all the officers. So we'll move on to declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest? No? That's fine. The minutes of the last meeting on the 9th of April, are you happy with those as being a true and accurate record? Yeah? Okay. I will sign them. Now coming to public and members' question time. The first section is public questions. Can I remind everybody that we've had your written question, we've given you a written answer, and you can have one supplementary answer to each of the questions you've asked. And let's make sure we don't run into other people's time so that we can complete the whole process within the time allocated. I've got 15 minutes for public question time, and I've got one question of Mr. Daldry. Would you like to go to the chair and put on the microphone?
You can get him one if you want. Have you got a spare sheet?
Right then. Okay.
So your reply to question one. To do what's best of the people of Gloucester, why did Gloucester City Council feel the need to go with the highest bidder on the tender process to work backwards against the people of the city to push the price of selling and buying through the roof, so it was going to cost the general public more money to buy and trade from the site?
We put the leasehold out to tender, and we had a number of applicants to bid for the land. It's for a long lease, 10 to 15 years, and we made a decision on the advice of Bruton Knowles, who dealt with all the three applicants who were shortlisted, and they recommended the company that has won the contract to acquire a leasehold there, and they will run a business from that site. And it was based on advice on what was the best bid, just as we did when we awarded the tender to Freedom Leisure to run GL1. So it was very competitive, it was fair, and the best bid got the contract to sign a deal to take over Hempstead Meadows to run a car boot and other things there. And they will have a long lease on the land.
Yes.
That's your second question. It was a tender process. It wasn't procurement. It was a marketing for bids to acquire the leasehold on the land, which is different from a procurement process to give somebody a contract to work for the council.
So it went down to the highest bidder?
There were another aspects of why that bid won, but that was the highest bidder as well.
Yeah, highest bidder. So there was no thought of the general people of the city, was there?
We think the operation of the car boot sale with the new operator there will be for the benefit of the people of Gloucester.
But not a local company, which your Gloucester City Council ethos is to work with local businesses and local people.
You've had a couple of supplementaries, Reg. We could move on to your item number 3, which is question number 2.
Okay. So, Mr. McGinty, I've spoken to several councillors and council members and leaders in the last week. Now, when you published that email to 40 plus people on my first attendance in this room back at the start of the year, you obviously asked for the police to attend and extra security. Now, when myself and my daughter and members attended this meeting, every councillor and everybody in this room already knew to look upon me as a thug or a criminal because you told everybody I was attending. Now, if you look at what you sent, which isn't very nice for anybody, I'm not a criminal. I was in partnership with Gloucester City Council. So why would you have the audacity and the nerve to call the police on me and label me as that person? So everybody has already based an opinion on myself. And you're going to say we had intelligence that I was attending. Yes, you had intelligence I was attending because I told you I was attending, because you asked me if I was attending. So the intelligence come from myself, from nobody else. And if you thought I was a threat, surely you would have not let me in the building.
Yeah, the managing director will answer this question for
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daldry, for the question. I was asked a similar question by a councillor who's in the audience, so I'll just read out the reply I sent to him. On that Thursday morning, I was briefed that a significant number, i.e. more than we had seats for, of supporters of Mr. Daldry planned to attend that evening's council meeting. Furthermore, I was shown copies of social media posts which said things like, unless we organise a mass protest, ... let's march to their offices and demand justice. Another thread said, is the council meeting on Thursday a public event? ... let's overwhelm the council. Another thread said, there needs to be a people's uprising against GCC. On this basis, I took a decision to increase the planned number of security guards from 2 to 3 for that evening, in case a significant number of the public turned out, i.e. more than we had seats for, and needed marshalling and stewarding. I also informed the police of these messages, and they decided to alert patrols to pass by and ensure any public attendance was peaceful. I had no intelligence concerning Mr. Daldry or his family himself, and the decision I took had nothing to do with him personally, but was merely a response to the number of other people who might have sought to attend the meeting, and some of these social media messages that I read and which contained elements of threat. The council meeting is an open public meeting, and there are no laws or rules preventing members of the public from attending a meeting. So that's basically the response I gave. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I listened to your reply, but do you really feel the need that you had to put my name to everybody in this room and paint me out to be a thug or a criminal, which I'm not? I'm a licensee, I'm a businessman, and you already just stated there and then that it was from other people on social media. So why did you feel the need to put my name into the hat and label me before I got through this room?
Mr. Daldry, I read the original email. It mentioned your name, but it didn't said none of those things.
So why didn't you mention the names of everybody else who put offensive wording?
And it was a private email just to members of the council. So somebody obviously shared it with you.
But it wasn't private because it went out to over 40 people.
It went out to only people on this council.
Yeah, 40 odd people received
so somebody
it.
shared shared it with you, and they
Well,
shouldn't have done.
it wasn't private, so
Because it
what was,
wasn't, that you weren't being criticised in that email, I've seen it.
but there was no need to put my name in there because I'm not a threat. If I was a threat, why have you got into business with me? Why am I sat in this space? If I was such a bad person, why have you labelled me? And it was very humiliating
All right.
and frustrating.
Can I say, let's move on to the last question, Mr. Dodley.
Right. So on the 8th of April, sorry, the question is confirm why the audit committee has not started looking at the review. That was the question. So on the 8th of April, you give us a decision that we was not the winning tender or winning party moving forward. So 9 weeks on till today, the process, the review is still not being done. And when Mr. Gravels asked 6 weeks ago for it to be looked at, it's still not been looked into. And when I wanted to publish and ask questions about my 2 petitions, I was told I wasn't allowed to ask the questions for the petitions because it was still in process of awarding the contract to Capital Car Boots. But it's only just came out that Capital Car Boots have only just signed the lease. So why is it taking 9 weeks from when you told me that we wasn't the winning tender till now that we haven't got a review?
Reg. The simple fact is that this review is being run by the Audit and Governance Committee, who operate independently from the executive. So I have absolutely no say on what they schedule for their work programme. I asked for them to look into it, and I do understand they agreed to do that at the last Audit and Governance Committee. So they're starting around now, but it wasn't our decision that what they decided was that as soon as the process is finished, they will start the review, because I want to know the results of that as well. Because this is not something, this kind of arrangement is not something that we routinely do. So I want to see if there's any improvements that we can make from it. But as I said, if I was to phone up the head of internal audit and start pushing him to get this done sooner, I could be accused of interfering in the process, because it has to be completely independent. We do not have any input into it whatsoever. If the internal auditors want to speak to me about it, that's fine. That's up to them. But we don't have a say whatsoever. So it's the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee who would probably be the best person to speak to. But it can't be any of us, because we have to stay out of it, so it remains independent.
Okay, so the Audit and Governance Committee will look at the process at some point. But usually it's best once the thing is completed and all the things have been done, then you can look at it in its entirety. But the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee who will make sure that it happens. Okay? Thank you. Right then, I've got members' questions next. I've got an Andrew in the back, but it's a different Andrew. Andrew Gravels is not here. He's not here for number 2. Number 3 is Councillor Patel. Sarge. Question number 3, have you found it?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you for the response to the question. My question is that since February of this year, when we had the meeting with regard to the budgets, the EnviroCrime role was discussed and approved unanimously by the council. Yet 3 months later, we're still waiting for the EnviroCrime officers to be in post. I see from the response that the council will be re-advertising within the next 2 weeks for this role. Residents are absolutely crying out for enforcement action on fly tipping, littering, dog fouling. I can't understand why it's taken so long to get these posts filled and advertised for this when it was weeks and weeks ago that the interview process took place that nobody attended. We couldn't find a suitable candidate. Yet here we are, this council is already advertising a position for a communications officer to try and convince the people of this city that the option that no one else is talking about.
You've got a question later on.
We're advertising a communications officer to convince the people of this city that the donor option, which is the only one you favour, is a great idea. So how quickly are we going to get these EnviroCrime officers in place, please? Because the people of this city are demanding answer. Thank you.
Seb, do you want to have a go?
Thank you, Leader. Thanks for the question. It's worth saying that the work of the council in terms of enforcement is very much still going on. There's never been a time when it hasn't been happening. This would just be an enhancement to it, an extra. We do very much want to fill these positions, and we've looked at the job spec to make it more encouraging for people to apply and for people with the right set of skills. It wouldn't have been right to have filled these roles with the people without the skills that we're looking for. And we are, within this, looking at enforcement on a wider scale and beefing up that, as was discussed at overview and scrutiny last week.
Right. You've got a second question. Question number 4.
Thank you for the answer to question number 4. The response does say that none of the businesses on the Lower Eastgate Street hold the keys to the new £80,000 gates that were installed recently as a replacement for the bollards. And the question is, the answer states that door staff hold the keys. So the question is, which door staff from which establishment hold the keys? Because different establishments will have different door staff from different security companies, I presume, or am I mistaken? And if it is a particular business that holds the keys, then this answer is incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. I don't think I'm at liberty to say which. I do know, but I don't think, am I able to say confidentially, I don't know, publicly who the door staff are that hold these keys? I think Justin Hudson's premises have quite a lot to say in terms of the cityscape. So if you take that as the answer of the establishment of who holds the door keys, it's them that have been properly trained into dealing with it. Of course, I think you would appreciate that we wouldn't want keys dotted around all over the place, otherwise it would defeat the whole purpose of having those gates, because I could see then that those gates would probably be left open pretty much more than they're closed, and that would just completely make those gates useless, really. Emergency services can, I think people's concerns would be the emergency services, and that's why you've asked us. So I think I can say that there has been no incidents of delays in the emergency services getting down Eastgate Street. And that would obviously need to be monitored as we go through the summer months and things like that. So just be assured that at present, those that have got the keys need the keys for the emergency services, and there's no one else that would have them, because it would just make those gates totally invalid. Does that reassure you?
It doesn't, because there was an incident recently where somebody suffered cardiac arrest and they were waiting for the gates, the emergency services were waiting for the gates, for the gates to be opened, which apparently took over 20 minutes. So there are serious concerns around public safety, and I'm just wondering whether if one one establishment has the keys to the gate, there's actually another facility, another venue closer to the gates, which if they had the keys as well, or their door staff, they would have been able to perhaps open the gates a lot quicker, which would have meant the emergency ambulance could have got through quicker, which is a matter of life and death. This is the point.
There's no need to hang. All right.
I'd like to respond, because I think, you know, you have a very valid concern, and that incident I don't know about. So if you would like to leave that with me, I would follow it up.
Thank you, Chair. So I believe you were emailed on the 27th of May by Andy Hearn with the following answer to that regarding to that incident. The installation of the gates on Lower Eastgate Street has not introduced any new access restrictions to the area. Prior to their installation, both ends of Lower Eastgate Street were already closed off under a long-standing road traffic order using retractable bollards and traffic barriers. Access to the area has always been and remains via Nettleton Road and Wellington Street. All emergency services are aware of this arrangement, as the road traffic order has been in place for over 12 years. Even before the gates were installed, ambulances would still have accessed the area through Nettleton Road or Wellington Street, so there should have been no delay or barrier to any emergency services because they all know how to access that road and have done so for over a decade via those other two routes. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks. I've got Stephanie next, and I've got you to come back, Sarge, but you can sit there if you want. Stephanie, do you want to? Shall I? I'll finish. Oh, then, Sarge. Do you want to go on to your next one, which is, if I can find it, question 9.
Thank you for your response to question 9. I appreciate you're an experienced councillor with 30 years experience. I've been councillor for 14 years now. When I send emails, I know what I'm doing. I know who I'm sending it to. If I need a lecture or advice from you, I will ask you for it. Otherwise, you have no right, no remit to tell me who I can and can't copy into emails. I'm democratically elected on behalf of my constituents, 9,500 plus constituents, to represent them, speak out for them, and do my best for them. So you have no right, how dare you, tell me who I can't and can't copy in. This is a democracy, and you're undermining it by trying to run it like a dictatorship.
I think that's a wild exaggeration. Sarge, we had a communication. You were trying to tell me what I should be doing in my ward as well. I just made a polite suggestion to you, and you know it. And I'm not going to go into further detail of a private conversation between you and me, and I'm not going to allow it to be exaggerated out of all proportion. Would you like to move to your next question?
Thank you. The next question was about a time frame in which members' emails or questions should be responded to. There's a 5-day protocol at the moment, which has been in place since December 2023. Now, there are times when we are not receiving responses within the time frame that should be there. As a leader, that's something surely you should be making sure with governance that it does happen. And quite frankly, to be told that only when we send emails to Here to Help is when this is being monitored with regard to the 5-day time frame. I think it should be monitored across the board, not just when we send emails to Here to Help. It should be across the board. So can you please provide some reassurances that this is something you will look into and make sure we do get responses within the protocol that's been set out and agreed? Thank you.
That's to you, Declan.
It is, right. It probably would help if I explain what happens when you email Here to Help. it automatically goes to the team who then triage it. And if it is something that we're responsible for, it gets put on what we call the Granicus system, and then it's allocated to the service area. So then it's properly logged, and then we can keep track of it. If it's not something that we're responsible for, it will be redirected to the correct organisation. I think maybe they will contact you and ask you to do that. I'm not entirely sure on that one. With regards to emails directly to officers, the problem is that's just an email. It's not connected into any system. The only way that would work is if people kept manual records all the time, and that would slow everything down and be very cumbersome, when Here to Help would be a much better way of doing it. Having said that, though, I agree, no system's perfect. So I just want to update you on what we're doing to improve things. And we've been working hard to integrate Fix My Street into Ubico. And we think, I saw a live demonstration of it today. So from roughly about a month's time, if everything goes to plan, if you use Fix My Street, you'll see all the Ubico issues will be then listed. And if it's something like a street bin or something, you sort of fill that in and it'll go directly to Ubico, and this should speed things up. I agree that nothing's ever perfect, and I understand that how you might feel when you don't get a reply as quickly as you should, but we're looking at ways to improve that, and I think that's one of the first things that we'll be doing, which we hope will improve things, but time will tell, as we say.
You've got another question, number 11, and that's it, Sarge. You'll have to leave the table after that one.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your response once again. This unitary council proposal with the 3 options, the county council have ruled out the donor option. The Liberal Democrat-run county council, of which you are a member, have ruled out the donor option. Other district councils are also ruling it out. Why is it? Yes, there was a letter signed back in March of this year by all the council leaders. That was in March. Times have moved on now. There's new administrations at the county council. Why is it that you, as a leader, you feel or think that the donor option is still the preferred option, and you want to use that taxpayers' money to try and convince the residents of Gloucester by creating a job, a communications officer job that was not even approved in the budget, to try and pursue your dream of staying on as leader, because you waited for 30 years to become leader of this council. You finally become leader, and then you realise, oh dear, it's going to put the position is going to be pulled from under the rug, because there's no way of a unitary council you will be the leader of a Lib Dem administration. So you now feel that you want to convince the people of Gloucester. This has not even been agreed. This has not even been agreed unanimously by council, yet you have the audacity to use taxpayers' money to pursue your own goal and your own agenda of a donor option, which you haven't even asked or consulted with the people of Gloucester, let alone the members in this chamber. So how do you think you can do that? Thank you very much.
That was quite a long question. On the 16th of December, the government announced their white paper, which proposed the abolition of district councils and county councils and creating unitary councils. The Conservative leader of the county council at the time proposed a single county option. He did very well in the local elections. His group's down to 6. 5 of the MPs decided they wanted to split the county, and that has been supported by Cheltenham Borough Council. And I thought that we ought to look at a third option, one that would protect the people of Gloucester and ensure that the people of the city have their own council that they can call their own, a council that can do the services for them. And bearing in mind that the city of Gloucester has directly elected local authority or local council for 542 years, and it would be very sad for the city to lose that. A letter went in from the 7 leaders of all the councils to the minister saying that there was three options that were going to be considered. One was the unitary council. The second was dividing the county in equal halves. And the third one was the Greater Gloucester model based on the city of Gloucester and its surrounding villages and the rest of the county. That was sent in to the government by all 7 leaders, and we've had a letter back saying they're waiting for these options to be presented to them in November. The county also requested £3.6 million on behalf of the 7 councils to help the local authorities through the process of reorganisation. We found out the other day that we've got just £266,000 for that. Some of the work that some of this money should be allocated to the 3 proposals that are being considered. At the moment, there's just 3 proposals being considered and looking at how the options would work. It's important if we're going to change local government in Gloucestershire and might have boundaries and powers for the next 50 years, that we get it right. I'm not ruling anything out, and I'm not ruling anything in. It's interesting also, when you talk about money, that your administration that you were a member of before the elections put in its budget £600,000 to deal with local government reorganisation, which we didn't put a penny in our own. So we're talking about who's spending the most on local government reorganisation, who's spending the most to get their preferred project through. It was the Conservatives at the budget in February this year when they ran the county council. And they fought a very strong campaign on a single county unity. And they went down from 28 members that they got elected in 2021 down to 6. So that argument didn't wash with the people of Gloucestershire either. What we need to do, Sarge, is talk about all the options and go through them. I've not closed my mind on any of them. What I want to make sure is that we look at all the options that we've got available and that we inform the people of Gloucestershire and the people of the city what's on the agenda and what the options are, what's the strengths and what's the weaknesses. I wouldn't say it's a donut, I would say it's more like a horseshoe. You know, the centre is Gloucester and then the rest of it's around it. And it's also interesting, before 1973, Gloucester City was a county borough. So that's what the model was, except it was a bit smaller than what we're proposing for the Greater Gloucester area. But it would mean the city of Gloucester working closely with the parishes like Churchdown, Brockworth, Upton St Leonard's, Hardwick, all those which are part of Gloucester's area, working with all of those in one council and having influence over what happens in our city and in our immediate area, rather than them being interfered with probably by people that live on the edge of the county, which is what often happens at Shire Hall. So thanks for your point. Let's have a proper conversation. Steph, I'm running over time, but I'm being nice today. And we only took 10 minutes. We only took 10 minutes on public questions. So question 5 is your first one.
Yeah, it's working now. Thank you. Yes, thank you for the work. This is question number 5. So yeah, thank you for that work on the consultations. That was really useful to see. I sent this question because I had become concerned about some of the decision making and the lack of some of the shutting down of questions, etc., in meetings. So I sent this before I saw that advert for the communications officer this week, but that just backed up my thoughts. Sorry, I've got a bit lost here. Hang on. Yeah, so I sent that before because I was worried about the dismissive of people asking questions in council and the ways this administration were behaving. Sorry, I've lost my page again.
This is about consultation, isn't it? Yeah, and you mentioned,
Yep, sorry, I've got my train back now, yep. So I was shocked, and then to see something you just mentioned earlier, saying you've not set your mind on anything and you're going to consult with the public about local government reorganisation. Now, that really goes against what was in that advert at this weekend, where you said, it specifically said, let me just read it out here, that you wanted a communications and engagement officer and you want to aspire to create a thriving Greater Gloucester as part of the county-wide plans to reorganise local government. We're looking for professionals who can successfully help us convince residents, businesses, stakeholders, local politicians and ministers our proposal is the best for everyone living in this city. Now, that really seems to me like you've made up your mind. It specifically mentions your Greater Gloucester model, which we haven't discussed. We haven't agreed as a group, as a full council. So which is it? Because you say your mind's not stuck on it. You're going to engage with the public, but actually it seems to me behind the scenes from this advert, you've set your mind up and you're employing somebody to convince everybody else. So please, can you reassure us that there's going to be full engagement, that role will be an engagement officer, not a communications officer, and it's going to engage and ask the people, not only ask them, but listen to their responses.
yeah, we're going to do that, and it's primarily an engagement officer. And if you look at the actual job description sheet next to it, it's very similar to the other two part-time communications officers we got. But there will be a lot of communication that needs to be done during the local government reorganisation, and we just need to make sure that when we're referencing a model that we're doing some detailed work on, that we can share it with the public, and we share it with the differences it might have on the other two models that are being considered, because each model has its strengths and weaknesses. And as far as local government reorganisation is concerned, I didn't want it, the government wants it. It's not something that we've asked for, but we're going to have to deal with it. And the most important thing is that we communicate properly. And you've looked at the issue with communication and engagement. We need to do that. I mean, we will be engaging fairly soon with the parish councils around there, and we will be establishing an all-party working group so that we can work through the options. We want for all the options. We want to test it, to stress test it, but we want people to play devil's advocate so that when we get to November, if we've got a plan to go forward as one of the options, it's robust. We'd want the one from the county council to be robust if that's what they're putting forward. And if somebody wants to split the county, that needs to be robust. And one of the things splitting the county, in other ways, needs to be, and I've mentioned this to the Member of Parliament, it should ensure that the Greater Gloucester map is within one local authority. We cannot have the nonsense where Longlevens is in one unitary council and Longford is in another, because anybody that doesn't know the city would think it's the same area. We can't have the nonsense of Innsworth being in a different local authority to Longlevens. So we need to make sure that whatever form of local government we do is right. And the purpose of doing that is that you need to look at various options. Otherwise, you're not doing the job properly because you're not challenging. So if you don't challenge the unitary council model, because it will have its weaknesses, then you're not doing your job properly. And if you don't challenge the split county, you're not doing it. If you don't challenge properly the Greater Gloucester model, you're not doing the job properly. And the public need to understand, and that's the purpose of the communications individual. And the likelihood that they be in post by the middle of the summer, And by the autumn, this council ought to have an idea of what it wants to do. The other thing is, in order for those three models to go forward, each needs to be sponsored by one local authority. So the government has made it clear you can't put in two options, but you can put in one option. So, you know, the likelihood is the split county model will be sponsored by Cheltenham Borough Council. The likelihood is, I don't know, because we don't know what the view of members of the county council that are very new might be sponsoring the single county. And I'd like us to sponsor the third so that we go to the minister with three good, solid options and make sure that whatever we get in the future is the best form of local government. And we want, as administration, to work with the opposition as well. And the communications team is there to communicate and to make sure that everybody understands the issue. Because lots of people just don't, as you know, a lot of people don't understand the differences between the county and the city council. But I sadly tell you, if we don't have a council of our own in the near future, in a few years' time, people will miss it and they will know what they've missed, and it'll be far too late then that they've lost their council that they've had for 542 years. That's the issue.
Right, my next question is number 6. So it was about the KPIs and the monitoring system. So obviously this previously was directed at Declan, but this was more to do with the new corporate plan and how you're going to be monitoring them, what sort of KPIs, because I do remember within the peer review, as it mentioned, there was talk of smarter KPIs. So I'd just like to see how that's going to be worked out, and if you're going to, that comes to overview and scrutiny, doesn't it, the KPIs? So if you're going to work with the overview and scrutiny committee to work out those KPIs on officers' recommendation. And again, I am concerned, and I do think there is some sort of way, and Declan initially agreed with me until he said that he didn't realise what the role of a councillor was, which was a bit of a shame after so many years, Declan. But I just wanted to see if we can have access to those systems as a limited access. So they're not just coming biannually, that we have some limited access to those systems so we can monitor those KPIs more regularly to see that the corporate plan is being actioned as you've proposed.
You know, the corporate plan was passed in 19th of May, and that's fast compared to what happened after the 2016 election, because we wouldn't have to bother approving it until September. There will be a biannual report, and we will make sure that the information that we can see how well the corporate plan's being implemented, that there will be key performance indicators, but also just the performance and how things are proven. That some of the work we're going to do, we don't need to go into that sort of detail. We just need to see that projects are starting and getting a move on. I mean, some of the issues, and as has been mentioned in council, is the big issue of finding the funding. And one of the groups was very keen to add additional items to the corporate plan, but not add any extra money. And I will be meeting the Member of Parliament before the recess to talk to him about how he can assist in helping us deliver the corporate plan. And the scrutiny committee could do that, and the scrutiny committee, of course, can ask for reports about any specific area that it wants. It's their free will. We're not controlling that. We're now into 45 minutes, Steph. So have you just got one more?
There's 2 more questions, if you'd be so kind, because you've had quite long answers too. Right. So the next one was about the policy on public consultations, which we don't have. Now, I think there was some wide variations in responses, whether it's the topic, but the one that got the biggest response was the one that had the more work undertaken. There was a lot more work done to engage with residents. So that speaks to me that the more work, the more effort. Could you not change this new role, this communications officer, to convince people actually to be doing that work that the top consultation received, to do that kind of work, to make sure we're really, because you've said several times, you know, this local government reorganisation hasn't been done since 1970 something, 2, was it? So can that be their role, to make a policy and engagement policy and engagement
One of the
document?
One of the reasons why we brought the communication services back in-house was to improve the performance of communication that this council has with the public at large, and make sure that everybody understands what this council's doing. And we're in the process of doing that. We've just got a new communications manager. That's not a full-time job, and we've got one officer that issues statements of press releases and things like that. Is on a part-time as well. When we have very small capacity in the city council compared to other district councils, and it's really important with everything that people understand what the issues are. But you'll also get more engagement with an issue if you create some really controversial thing to do. If it's not controversial and everybody's happy, people just say, "Oh, that's all right. Don't need to comment on that." I remember going to a consultation at Hempstead about the conservation area. Nobody was interested because the plan was fine. But if we decided to do something with the church, I imagine there have been hundreds of people there complaining. So it's also a matter of the issue itself and whether people want to engage. But yes, that's the purpose of having professional engagement officers, professional communications officers that can deal with that. Next question.
Yeah, and I'll be quite quick with this one. So thank you for the answer. And you said about putting the heart back into Gloucester. So I did just quickly look at your manifesto, and it sounds great, and the people seem to have liked it. Sorry, it's disappeared now. Anyway, I'll forget about where it is. But what I really want to know is, this is a historic city, as you've stated, 542 years it's had a council, and we're all proud of that. Two things that I think maybe you need to stop worrying about history is what went on in our administration and just concentrate on yours now with the past comments you've made this evening. But that advert rings to me that you had made up your mind and you want to convince the people of Gloucester of Greater Gloucester Model. That is exactly how it reads. And it wasn't until
I've already answered that point.
No, but it wasn't. No, what I'm going to ask you now is, because of the comments made by the opposition parties, did you actually realise that was the wrong thing to say and do, and actually now you're going to engage?
I think there's been a misinterpretation, and I think there might be some minor amendments to the advert as well that you might be satisfied with, just to clarify exactly what the role is, and you'll see my response on that. But as far as civic pride and everything like that, there's a number of issues that we've introduced recently, like new shop front fascia, a gardening team that's starting to deal with some small local gardens. They'll be dotted around the city, wayfinding in the city centre, the completion of the former and Greyfriars, regenerating derelict sites around the city, and urban greening. So it's all part of the day job. Thanks, Seth. I'll finish there. Sarge, do you want to put your petition in?
I understand I have 3 minutes to speak as well if I wish to on this.
Just introduce what it's about, because we're not here to debate the merits. Just introduce what it's about, and then we'll receive it, and then we'll come. Yeah, but just explain what it's about without any rancour. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a petition here on behalf of my residents and my community, It has been signed in electronic format on the change.org website, and I have a hard copy as well. In total, there are approximately 526 signatures with regards to problems, antisocial problems, and other issues that have been ongoing in the Sinope Street car park, which is a City Council-owned car park. So residents and my community are asking for some action as a matter of urgency, because we want to see less talk and more action. Just use my 3 minutes now, if I may. Thank you very much. As I said, the residents and my community have had enough, and that's why we have this petition for Gloucester City Council. A copy will also be provided to Gloucestershire Constabulary as well. Something of this nature is going to be a multi-agency approach and effort. It is an ongoing work in progress, but it's got to a stage where enough is enough. In this car park, in and around this Gloucester City Council-owned car park, we have problems around street drinking, urinating in public, sex working, antisocial behaviour, fly tipping, and various other issues as well. This is obviously, as you can imagine, affecting the quality of life of the local residents and the community, and they have had enough. My constituents deserve to feel safe where they work and live, whether they're out going to the shops, whether they're going to the pharmacy, the doctor's surgery, to places of worship, and also for kids going to the school. There's 2 schools within yards of the Sinope Street car park. And clearly their safeguarding has to be of the utmost importance, and it's got to the stage where we can't just brush this under the carpet and ignore it. We need to give it the same priority like we are prioritising the city centre. I saw the recent press release by the council where £200,000 has been allocated over 2 years for a new team that's been set up to focus on creating a safer environment for residents and visitors in the city centre, an ambitious project. And the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement says, we've listened to what residents are telling us. They're concerned about the antisocial behaviour and welfare of some of these people who are vulnerable. Well, what about listening to my residents on what they've been saying for years and years? Is their voices falling on deaf ears because it's an inner-city deprived area for Barton and Tredworth? So you can find £200,000 now for the city centre, but you can't find any money for issues in my ward that have been ongoing on for several years now, where there was a Conservative administration, irrelevant. This council, and it's a city council-owned car park. So is this council operating a 2-tier system? That's the question. And will you now listen to my residents and my constituents, just like you've been listening to the people of Westgate? And coincidentally, Westgate is the ward where the Cabinet Member is the councillor for. So maybe that's just a coincidence. Maybe that's just a coincidence. But enough is enough. My constituents have enough, and we deserve equal treatment, just like in the city centre and everywhere else. And we want to see some visible presence as well. We shouldn't be a 2-tier system here. Thank you very much. And here's a petition, if I may hand that to you as well. Thank you very much.
But there's no need to respond to it now, unless you wanted to. No, it's fine. Sarge has had his. Go on.
I can respond to you, Sarge. Would you like a response? No, that's okay. You can sit back there. It's fine. Thank you so much for this petition. And Barton and Tredworth, it's just literally on the border of my own Westgate division as you go past Gloucester Park and everything. So it's literally, you've just got the road where the park is, and then you're actually in Barton and Tredworth. All areas are really important to this council. And well, they're important to me. I go through Barton and Tredworth a lot. I go along the roads to the car wash that's on the corner by the Tesco's on Eastern Avenue. So I'm always going over through Barton Street. I will take this into consideration. I'll have a good read of this. I'll have a look at the signatures that you've gathered up, and we'll see what we can do. okay, in terms of it. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Right then. Well, we spent much longer on questions and petitions than we had time for, but it was done with good humour today, which I think is encouraging. Number 7 is the first agenda item, is the first cabinet paper, and I think that one is advertisements in the conservation area.
Yep, that's
Sarah.
me. Yes, so I brought this paper today because when I became cabinet member for planning last year, I asked the conservation officers what we can do about the poor signage in Gloucester. And I was told that we can apply to the Secretary of State to introduce an area of special control within the city centre conservation area. This will take away deemed consent, which is like permitted development, and give us a greater control over shop signage and adverts on the gate streets, as any changes will now require planning permission. Cabinet is asked to resolve that authority be delegated to the head of place and myself to seek authority from the Secretary of State to define the city centre as an area of special control. Also, as part of this process, the council carries out a consultation exercise with the public. And finally, officers be authorised to submit relevant bids to secure additional funding to manage the control. And why are we doing this? Well, as an administration, we are passionate about making the most of our historic city, and examples of poor signage have been increasing over the years and is causing harm to the appearance and character of our city. This leads to poor quality becoming the norm, less pride and reputational damage, and less investment in the city. We currently have guidance to businesses in the conservation area to make sure signage is sympathetically designed and in keeping with our world-class heritage. We have a design guide for shop fronts. We have policy in our city plan. We have a city centre conservation area management plan. However, we can't enforce these currently, only on listed buildings. So this action will change that and extend it to all buildings. This is common practice in many historic cities and shopping centres, including Gloucester Docks, who set guidelines for businesses. The aim is to make the city more attractive to residents, shoppers, and thousands of tourists who visit. And research by Historic England shows areas with better quality signage attract more investors, have more pride in their city, and have greater economic prosperity. So I ask you to support this paper today.
Caroline.
Thanks, Sarah. It's a really good report. I would agree. I think the brightly coloured plastic signs that you see are more what you'd expect to see in a modern purpose-built shopping centre, but not necessarily on our historic buildings that are supposed to portray the heritage and the culture of our city. So I do welcome the consultation on this. I also think that there's a perception amongst members of the public that our city centre is just full of fast food shops. And it's not surprising because they're the ones with the garish colours and the design, and they detract from the other more sympathetically designed shop fronts and from their business. So I'd say probably my only concern is if we're going to ask existing shop owners to replace their signage, we'd need to give them sufficient notice and guidance, but you've already mentioned that. To find a cost-effective way of doing it. But I'm hoping that if we have a consistent standard for our shop fronts, over time, it'll elevate the feel of the city centre and it'll go some way towards restoring our civic pride.
Anyone else? No. I mean, this report did go to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and it was well liked, and there was a lot of positive comments there. And I do think it's an important thing. We do have to make gate streets much more attractive than they are at the moment. There's been improvements with the work that's been done with the Southgate Street townscape thing and the Heritage Action Zone in Westgate Street. But this is all part of making improvements, and hopefully making those improvements will also encourage the sort of retailers that we've lost back into the city centre. And I think that's one of the things that I find most disappointing, that we've lost some of those shops. You know, it's not that easy. You know, I bought this at Moss Brothers in Westgate Street. They're not there any longer, so I keep wearing the same old suit. Because I want to get on the bus and go to Cheltenham. But so we do need to do this and improve this, and so we get a much better city centre, and that's all part of the plans we've got, part the forum, the Greyfriars. It's all about uplifting Gloucester city centre, and I commend this report. It's really good. It's something imaginative, and I'm pleased that it's my administration that's proposing it, and it was supported by everybody else, of course. Well, okay to approve? Yep. Item 8. The legacy of the Gloucester Canaries. You'll have to wait. No, Andy. No, you come. Andy. No, Andy. No, come. I was saying that to Sarah. So, Councillor Lewis was a member of the Task and Finish group, which this report came from. So we're giving him the opportunity of presenting his report and recommendations to the Cabinet, and then I'll ask the Cabinet member to respond.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yes, I am here tonight because Alistair, who presented the notice of motion, I'm afraid he's ill, so I've stepped in at the last minute. But I've been at every single meeting, like I do. This is about the Canaries. Now, I didn't know much about them, I must admit. You know, I read Caroline Meek's book, and it had the whole chapter on it, and I think, well, didn't know. Then Alistair brought it to council, and I've been looking into it ever since. And it's quite a sad story. You know, first time we really asked women to actually go into factories and this and that, and we try and kill them. You know, they called the Canaries because they were covered in sulphur. Not the best thing to be covered in, I must admit. We don't know how many ladies died or whatever. We know about a few that were, because there's explosives elsewhere in a country that they did go bang occasionally. They didn't in Quedgley, but I mean, if you look in a report how many bombs and this, that and the other they actually produced, it was a fair old bit of the war effort that they did. And nobody, I mean, I've been there for 35 years and I didn't know about them at all, to be perfectly honest. I knew RAF Quedgley, but to see this, it was quite eye-opening. And I think as we went through, and QTC actually did a Facebook sort of survey and whatever, everybody was astounded. This hasn't happened before. We looked at various ways of celebrating, commemorating, whatever you like to call it, their work and their lives and everything else. We first started looking at, because Alistair wanted a statue. We soon sort of had a look at that and thought, right, we haven't got money for that because it's going to be 100,000, you know, for a decent statue, you know, your bronze effort and whatever, and getting somebody to commission it and all the rest of it. Then we moved on to sort of various places to commemorate, you know, put the blue plaques in or this, that and the other. But then we sort of came towards the end, we wanted a walkthrough sort of thing, where they come from, where the main gates were, or where a couple of Nissan huts were, and outside Tesco's where the main gates were, and things like that. So that's what we sort of came up with as a default sort of thing, that we'll do these, how should we say, the blue plaques and the information boards and that sort of thing, which would inform people what went on, because it was vital work. And it must have been horrible in there, to be perfectly honest. You know, they didn't have things like masks and stuff like that. They were just breathing this sulphur in, which must have killed most of them, or at the very least damaged their health. They're coughing and spluttering. If you're coughing up yellow, it's not going to be good, is it? So that's where we are. I'm not going to go anymore because there's enough waffle and whatever going tonight. And but that's what we need to look at, and whatever the fundraising. I think that can be done quite happily with various organisations, maybe the lottery and this, that, yeah. But we need to sort of, this is on to get a working group together to look into it, to get more informed. Then we can go to people to ask for the money, pretty please. But QTC are very much on board with this, and they want to be sort of like help lead, or lead, should we say, which I think is very appropriate because it is their patch anyway. So I'll leave it there because I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, but because we're not asking for money yet.
30,000 would be lovely, but there you go. Anyway, so that's where we are. It was a good work into it, and there's a good information gatherer, I tell you what, and it was sad but impressive, I think the word is. So anyway, I'll pass it over.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'll just kind of formalise it for the Cabinet tonight. The report asks that we write to Quedgeley Town Council to ask to work together on this and agree a suitable site and to design the board. And it also asks that the leader writes a letter of support to the Canary Girls Memorial Project, outlining the contribution made at Quedgeley and recognising the important role of the people of Gloucester that they played in the First World War effort. And I didn't realise there was over 6,364 people, mainly women, working at that factory. So a lot of women to remember. So yeah, this is a great piece of work and it's really good. I think everyone needs to know in Gloucester what happened during the war.
Yeah, like you, Andy, I didn't know anything about this. It was when it came up, but it's a really good report, excellent report from the task group, and particularly the historic nature that was drafted by, I think, Andrew Armstrong, I think. So the quality was good. Fully understand what happened. Caroline.
Thanks, Andy. I'd like to thank the other councillors as well and the officers on the task and finish group for really carefully considering all the options and presenting the recommendations, and to Andrew Armstrong for a really informative and interesting report. Like you, Andy, a lot of us, I think, were unaware of the history of the Gloucester Canaries before that motion was brought to council. But I thought this report really brought to life the lived experience of those men and mostly women who were employed at NFF 5 and the risks they faced when they were dealing with those toxic and explosive substances. It's quite alarming to read that their protective clothing was not fireproof just because of the cost implications. That's quite terrifying. So it's quite fortunate that there's no recorded fatalities at the site, not due to explosion anyway. Obviously, we don't know the longer term effects. I also find it really interesting that 150 males and 3 females were prosecuted or fined or jailed for contravening the regulations around bringing in prohibited items into the danger area. Now, considering only 20% of the workforce were men, I was wondering, is that because mostly men were sent to the danger area, or is it because they're perhaps a bit less compliant or more forgetful when they're observing rules? But no, I'm happy to support the recommendations in the report. I think the objective is to honour the contribution of these people to the war effort by raising awareness. So I think the interpretation boards would be a really great way to do that.
Quick.
Only quick. I just think that with the health and safety, not many women smoked in those days. But when you're going in with a fag with sulphur everywhere, it's not very good, is it? You know, getting the older players number 6 out and all the rest of it. Yeah, I honestly think this is going to be brilliant, and I agree with what everybody said. I just wonder what else is there in this city that's gone on at the where the meteor was done and all the rest of it. What actually happened there? Was the women, you know, and people forget that in 1914, 1918 or 1919, whichever way you want to do, they always remember the men. They don't remember the ones at home. You know, and the poor women, the first time we asked them, we tried to kill them. Crazy, absolutely crazy. But I think this will be brilliant. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Are we agreed? Yeah. Right then, it's you, Sebastian. You've got 3 reports. You can keep us here for an hour, or you can do a good introduction. We'll be quicker.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, my reports are a bit like buses, I think, and you wait ages for them, and then 3 come along at once. The first of the reports is the Gloucester Glyphosate Reduction Strategy, which is our carefully balanced plan to reduce the council's reliance on glyphosate and also to contribute to the city's broader environmental ambitions. Last year, we halved our glyphosate use from 23 to 24, and this strategy builds further on that by going for more reductions in areas where glyphosate is least needed, such as the city centre, which has high footfall, and also trialling alternative approaches in selected streets. Now, we do recognise the concerns around glyphosate's environmental and potential health impacts, and whilst it remains legally approved and low risk in the small doses that we use it in local authorities, it does remove an important food source for insects, and it risks public perception of overuse. Now, our approach is incremental, it's evidence-based and it's practical, and we do reserve the right, if you look at recommendation 5, to retain the ability to intervene with herbicide or manual removal where there's obstruction or whether there are dangerous weeds such as knotweed or hogweed, giant hogweed. And this is about environmental responsibility, but without compromising the public realm standards or raising costs. And it's also about not having what we call a cliff edge approach to this, where we suddenly stop using glyphosate totally, and then we risk losing control and losing the support of the public. We've got to take them with us on this journey. Now, it has been said in the press recently that this should have been done years ago, and I agree with that statement. The difference is it's taken a Liberal Democrat administration to finally take some steps on this. I hope you'll approve this strategy.
Anyone else? Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. This is certainly a really good step in going forward. And I think I've mentioned in the past that, of course, I would like to see this trialled all over my own division of Westgate. I know you mentioned that it wouldn't be used as much now in the city centre where there's a high footfall. There's certainly streets within Westgate where I've had residents very concerned about its usage. So I'm really pleased with this going forward and the reduction that is going to happen. To the point where hopefully we will see that it is actually going to not be used in the long term. So thank you.
Yeah, I also think this is a positive step forward for how we manage weeds. We know that when we have particularly rainy seasons that applying the weed killer is very ineffective. So it's kind of a bit wasteful of our money and resources that could be put to better use. I think the phased approach is quite pragmatic. We'll have a chance to see whether we just, the complaints about we don't want weed killer just changes to we don't want weeds. But, you know, it gives us a chance to gauge public perception and how they're coming to live with or feel differently about weeds or unloved plants, if you like. And we also want to encourage biodiversity, don't we? Particularly in our city centre where, you know, perhaps it's a bit more of a concrete jungle, is try and bring some biodiversity and insect life into those areas, especially pollinators. So, yeah, welcome this report.
Yeah, can I think this is a very positive paper, and it's going to benefit the environment in Gloucester, particularly the built environment, because I saw a big improvement in weed clearing last year than the previous year. And that was because we purchased one of the weed whipping machines that some people mistake as a road sweeper. And then they write to me because it's not properly swept the road, but in actual fact, it's ripping the weeds out. And I've seen the difference in my own ward, and there's great reduction in weeds. And now we're going to buy a second weed ripping machine so we can cover the city much more effectively than before. There would be an automatic reduction in the use of weed killer anyway, I would imagine. But this is a really good policy so that we reduce the use of glyphosate to a minimum amount of litres, just a few litres a year, and that would be fine where we need to use it in some of those narrow streets or where you can't get the machine in and where you just need to keep the streets nice. But the important thing is that the people of Gloucester can be confident in moving over to this new technique. Their streets will be smart and clear and clean and not having great big long also so not long, but tall weeds growing and nobody's doing anything about it because we are already doing something about it. Sebastian, I don't know whether you've got anything else you want to say before we finish.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah. If I respond to you first, because it's easier to remember all of that. I think we're very lucky at Gloucester City Council in the climate change manager also was a councillor before and delivered the UK's first glyphosate reduction and elimination plan. And so he's got a lot of experience, and we have a weekly meeting where we discuss how to progress this if this is passed tonight, which I think it will be. And it's worth noting that in the council that he used to represent, they currently, I think, have a glyphosate use of about 0.5 litre a year. So they've reduced it down quite drastically over the years, but they've done it in a managed, staged, phased approach, which is what we need to do in order to take people with us on the journey. It will certainly benefit pollinators and biodiversity in the city, because it will inevitably lead to some plants being left to thrive. And I do think it's important that we term them plants and not always weeds. So thank you, Councillor Courtney, for that intervention. It's really important also that the public see that we are still managing the areas. If you look at the grass cutting that goes on in the city, Ubico are perfectly capable of leaving patches where you've got poppies or wildflowers, perhaps, leaving patches under trees, leaving them under street signs, just to be a little bit of wilding going on whilst managing the grass area. So we can do all of that. We can manage grass areas with maintenance strips. The important thing is not giving the public the signal that we've abandoned it, which I think has happened in some councils where they've adopted a cliff edge approach of abolish it instantly and totally, and then they lose control and the policy ends up getting reversed. So thank you very much to Councillor Trimnell for suggesting that your area, your ward, might be a good candidate, and we'll definitely be looking at all the areas of the city and working with members to ask for volunteers, really, to have trial areas and control areas so that we'll have them alongside each other. There'll be some trial areas where we don't use anything, and there'll be some control areas where we carry on as before, and we'll just see the perception of each and whether we can bring the public along to go on this journey with us. Thank you.
Agreed? Yeah. Item 10 is the draft air quality action plan, results and recommendations. Sebastian.
Thank you, Chair. This is a good news story. As I said at scrutiny the other night, it's updating Cabinet on the outcomes of the recent consultation on our draft air quality action plan. And whilst the response to the consultation was fairly modest, as we've heard earlier in the meeting, there were only 37 participants, but the feedback we received was generally very supportive. It's a good news story because the air quality in Gloucester is improving. The air quality management areas that we have, the 3 of them, we are now at the position where they have been consistently below the target for air quality, i.e. the air quality has been so good for 5 years in a row that we now have to consider mandatory revocation as ordered by DEFRA. So that's a good news story. We don't want to abandon or stop working on these areas, but if we are able to draft a strategy, or a strategy rather than an action plan, it gives us a wider scope to look at more issues to do with air quality. The air quality management areas tend to focus on pollution from cars, and this strategy that we'll develop gives us a wider scope. We're also proposing to replace the old 1964 smoke control area in the city centre with a city-wide one, and this ties in with the ambitions on air quality strategy to have a conjoined approach to the city. I hope this meets with approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Caroline?
Thanks, Seb. Really good report. I'm glad now that our ACMAs, is that how you call it? ACMAs are being revoked. We're not taking our foot off the gas in terms of continuing to improve air quality. Not the most appropriate metaphor, but I'm also interested to see what the results of your research into the effectiveness of anti-idling signs will be. I know that in my ward in Tuffley, I've seen residents have put their own anti-idling signs up. So it's obviously something that concerns people, particularly if you're living near a busy junction or a bus stop or something where traffic gets backed up. I also think extending the smoke control area is a positive move as well. I also, again, it's something I come across in my casework from time to time. So I think informing residents about the effect that this has on their health and advising on alternative fuel sources would be welcome.
Anyone else? No? Again, I think it's something that we should be celebrating, the fact that the 3 air quality management areas are going to be revoked because the air quality is better than the standards being set by DEFRA for the last 5 years. And I think that is really good news, that the quality of the air in Gloucester is better than it was in the past. One of the aspects of that will be the low emission vehicles, electric vehicles, the change in those sort of things. More people walking around, cycling around might also help, or going by bus. I'm also pleased to support the extension of the smoke control areas from just not the city centre but to the whole of the city. I think that is really helpful. Of course, many of the housing in the suburbs of Gloucester don't have open fires or things like that, so the emissions from those properties is much lower. But I think having that policy would be really good, and I think still the intention, the cabinet member could reassure me, still the intention to carry on monitoring the various places around the city, and we will carry on monitoring the 3 areas that are being revoked, just to make sure that nothing happens in the future that we would be worried about.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to give that reassurance. We do have, I think it's 25 or 26 diffusion tubes around the city which monitor air quality, but there's also the wider aspect to consider, which these only monitor the pollutant from vehicles mainly. We also need to look at the wider picture, which is smoke, as we've seen, but also the small particles that get into the atmosphere, all the things to do with transport that not necessarily directly in our control, but we can work with the county council on. And I do understand that we are getting a new piece of equipment which will monitor air quality in a finer way with smaller particles. I don't understand all the technical details because I've only been briefed on it very quickly by the officer in charge, but I think he knows a lot about this subject, and I'm sure I'll be briefed even further. But it is a good piece of news that we're getting a piece of equipment. I think it's funded by DEFRA, if that's right, Managing Director. Yeah, anyway, but that will enhance our monitoring capabilities as well. So overall, it's a good news story, and we won't. I won't use the phrase that Councillor Courtney used and I used myself in a previous council debate, but we won't let up on this issue, let's say.
Thank you. Are we all agreed? Yeah. Number 11, the final report.
Thank you, Leader. This is the final one from me. You'll be relieved to hear. It's the Gloucester Urban Greening Strategy, which we've inevitably christened the GUGS, which is a clear evidence-led plan to prevent our city, to future-proof our city and prevent it succumbing to rising climate pressures in the future. It's not just about planting some trees, although that does form part of it. It's about trying to make space for nature in every part of Gloucester, but particularly in the built environment. And it's about fairness as well, because it prioritises action in the areas with the least tree canopy cover and with the highest deprivation. There are 8 proposals. I don't propose to read them all, but they involve planting more trees and the city's first rainwater garden, for example, and they also involve engaging with residents to see how they can play their part in this, because we're all in it together. It also integrates the glyphosate reduction strategy, showing that this administration is taking a comprehensive approach on both climate and environmental health issues. So I hope this report will meet with approval. I think it's a very good read, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Go on.
Thanks, Seb. I thought it was a really interesting report and very educational as well, actually. I didn't know what swales were before, but now I do. I also really like the idea of depaving some of the concrete areas in the city. Like you point out in the report, a lot of people now are opting for low maintenance gardens with the fake grass and mainly paving. So we do need to redress the balance there. Having said that, though, residents do like seeing more trees in the community spaces. So even in my ward of Tuffley is very leafy in parts. We've got Robinswood Hill as part of our of my ward, but there are other areas in Tuffley, like the Yew Tree Estate, ironically, that have far fewer trees. So I know that it's something that's important to residents to be able to see trees and have the sound of bird song, as well as all the health benefits that come with having more trees. So I think having objectives around canopy cover is a really good way of addressing some of those inequalities.
Anybody else want to say anything? It's a really good report, so I'm pleased to support it. I mean, the first action which has been taken already is, of course, the green wall in the car park at the Forum. That's an example of urban greening, and I can think of a few sites where additional trees or some form of greenery would really help the environment. I managed in my own ward to get 3 trees planted on the edge of the car park at the bottom of Hare Lane, and they're growing slowly, but it will make that area a lot better. The only issue, of course, is the maintenance, and I think that's one of the reasons why the County Council Highways Department always gets nervous when they're being pressed to replant trees that they felled. But we need to work with them as well to make sure the highway trees that have been taken down because they're diseased or the tree's dead or vehicles hit it and it's completely damaged, that the County Council plants new trees at the first season after the tree has been felled, and it grinds out the stumps, and that's one of the things that I find frustrating. And I'll be meeting a member of the County Council Highways Department tomorrow to argue the point about having a number of trees that need to be planted in spots around my own county division. But yeah, urban greening is really good strategy, and we should be supporting it and encouraging people not to concrete over the front garden, but to leave the lawn there or leave the bushes there. Instead of having 4 or 5 on the front, they maybe just need 1 or 2. But there you are. Okay, we're happy to support. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It's 7:30. We finished. Thank you for staying slightly longer time than you were expecting.